Welcome back again. In our last two videos, we talked about seeing your own imagination, recognizing this incredible force that's shaping everything you experience in the world, and then talking about how that force shapes our collective progress through the science fiction feedback loop. Today, I want to talk about how you channel that incredible dynamo into making change yourself. So, we've been doing this at the Center for Science and the Imagination for the past 10 years. Our mission is to inspire collective imagination for better futures. And we think about that question, how do you make change? How do you change our relationship with the future? The starting point is letting go of the default, letting go of all of the assumptions that you put on like armor every day, the way that you use special words, vocabulary, tools of the trade, modes of thinking to interact with your colleagues, your schoolmates, and how if you want to change the future, you have to let go of some of those things. You have to allow yourself to think of something impossible, think of something that you've never thought of before. So the way we do this is what we call the collaborative imagination framework. So we build on a few different people to do this. One of them is Stephen Asma. He's a philosopher and a jazz musician. He wrote a great book called The Evolution of Imagination. And he talks about how we have this rational, linguistic, cognitive imagination that helps us think about big ideas, but we also have an embodied quick reaction and imagination, the thing that helps us do improvisation, the thing that an athlete or a musician uses to do something amazing without even having to think about it. And one of the things we try to do when we bring people together is to find that improvisational side, to allow us to do things that we didn't know we could do. And the other thing that I like to build on is Bernard de Koven and the idea of play. How do we be playful? How do we create playful spaces? How do we invite people into this special arena, this magic circle, this safe place where they can take a risk, where they can try something weird, where they can fail, where they can experiment? And that idea of playfulness and really joy is essential to how we approach the invitations that we make when we want people to come and imagine with us. So this is all part of creating conditions, which is the first of the three big things we have in our framework. So we talk about that in terms of the aesthetics, the kinds of invitations we make when we want people to come and hang out with us. We talk about that in terms of the structure and the curation, everything from who's coming to what kind of space we're going to use. Are we going to have Post-its? What shape are they going to be? What color are they going to be? Are we going to pre-print materials and invite people to become secret agents in a special mission? We've done that. It's really fun. And most importantly, we're performing this optimism ourselves, right? We're performing this positive relationship with the future, not because we think everything's going to be great, but because we think we have a responsibility and an agency to think about the future. That if we can do this together, we can harness our collective imagination, and we might come up with some ideas that will actually make the world better. The second thing we do in the collaborative imagination framework is we try to define processes, because everything I've talked about sounds great, but then you think, how do I do this? This is a blank page. How do I imagine a future? There's no scaffolding, there's no grounding. So we use the common artistic tactic of creative constraints. We say, well, we want you to imagine the future of AI and automation working in this really broad interdisciplinary group. You got 20 minutes, right? We've given people a time constraint or a space constraint, some kind of a boundary in terms of what kind of object or material or story they're going to come up with. And that takes perfection off the table. It invites people to do something that is improvisational because you don't have time to think it all through carefully, and to collaborate. So we're inviting people to share their imagination, and that's when really amazing things happen, when you start to riff off of other people's ideas. And we also focus a lot on goal setting, so we put the work into workshop. And it's not just that you're going to do one of these exercises, you're going to do several of them, right? You're going to do the big picture thinking, then you're going to come up with characters, you're going to come up with the objects and the places that live in this world. You're going to step through a whole process so that by the end of something as short as an hour, as long as a couple of days, you're going to have a pretty detailed, specced out skeleton or sketch of a compelling future. Maybe one that you like, maybe one that you don't like, but something that is thought through and feels real enough that we can engage our holodecks and think about it and say, is this a future that I like? How do I feel about it? And then finally, the third major area of aspect of our framework is shaping outputs. How do we take the material that comes through this process and actually send it out to broad audiences? So we do a lot of polishing and editing. We're always thinking about where this stuff is going to go so it doesn't just end up in a little room somewhere and nobody ever sees it. And we think a lot about how we can engage those broader audiences in the same kind of invitation. All that stuff I talked about, the aesthetic, the playfulness, a sense that we can collectively change the future, that needs to be embedded in the final outputs as well. So we're creating stories, really, and we're trying to inspire conversations about the future. So how do we invite as many people as possible into this kind of collaborative conversation about the future? So the most important output is not the stories, because we're not trying to create crystal balls. We're not trying to create predictions of the future or models that are going to be the most correct, most accurate models. The most important output is the people, actually. It's the people who are involved, the participants in these workshops and conversations, and it's the broader audiences. It's getting people together into these conversations about the future. So when we do this work, we're engaging in a kind of imagination practice. We're building these imagination muscles individually and collectively, and by iterating, recognizing again that perfection is off the table and we're going to keep trying this, and as much fun as it is to come up with one vision of a possible future, what if we have 4 or 8 or 20, right? What if we explored lots of different possibility spaces as a way to exercise our capacity for the adjacent possible, start to think about all these different possibilities and have that collective conversation? That means we also have more positive yardsticks. In the last video, I talked about how novels like 1984 can be really helpful yardsticks to measure the things we don't want. But we don't have nearly as many good stories about the things that we do want, the things that we all agree are hopeful futures that we want to work towards. We need more of those. And so these kinds of exercises can be really helpful in helping us decide whether a story is a good yardstick or not, and have really productive conversations about where we want to go together. So Ray Bradbury likes to say that a science fiction story is not a lens, it's a mirror. And that's another really important aspect of this collaborative imagination framework. It's not just about the future, it's really about how we enact change in the present. And so these stories can become blueprints, or at least thought experiments that invite people to say, well, if I do like this in the future, how do we get there? How do we start building the dotted line from here to there? How do we start making changes now to work towards that future? How do we use that positive yardstick? All of these activities help build imaginative capacity. And this, I think, is one of the most essential things that we're doing and that we want many more people to be doing. If you think about imagination as this cognitive faculty that everybody has, but most people don't have a lot of conscious access to, can't even really see most of the time, I think that's a tremendous challenge. It's maybe the biggest challenge facing the human species. If we want to survive all of the challenges that the 21st century is throwing at us, we need many more people to feel empowered to imagine their own futures. So this question of imagining the future is not just abstract. It's not just people out there or imaginary workshops participants that are coming to hang out with us. I'm also talking about you. How can you start to imagine your future and get the people around you to do it too? So to start that off, to get you going, we have a positive futures exercise that you can try. The details are down here. So we're going to use some storytelling techniques called world building to get you to concretely flesh out, populate, detail a vision of a future that you might want to live in. So we're going to step you through that. It's a really powerful exercise. We do this all the time. Let us know how it goes. Reach out to us. We love to collaborate. We're really excited to work with you. And I want to finish by saying, we've talked about how your imagination is there. It's incredibly powerful. You're using it all the time, but you might not recognize that you are. So you can do this. You have this incredible holodeck right here between your ears, and you can use it to imagine a better future. And I think you should. I think more of us need to take this on to navigate and make better choices about where we want to go together. Can you imagine that?